Ben Riss joins us now. Ben's a former member of Medway Youth Council. He was a Lib Dem candidate in Medway at the recent local elections. Nice to have you on the show, Ben. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, hiya. When I was a kid, obviously, we had Gillingham Youth for Christ in Gillingham, who ran a youth club that was after school sessions. But a lot of independent youth centres are closing, and a lot of youth centres are closing. And we've seen this trend since 2010. And it's been a trend. And even in Medway, Medway Council are in debt. They've inherited, the new administration has inherited a debt from the previous administration. And, even in Medway, youth centres could be at risk. And it's not a vote loser for any party because young people typically don't vote.
Yeah, but old people, I'm a parent of teenagers. I think it's a little dismissive of all the other generations to say we don't care about young people. We wouldn't be talking about it on BBC Radio Kent this morning, Ben, would we, if we didn't think it mattered?
No, obviously it matters to every generation, realistically. However, it's not a vote loser, if that makes sense, for typical.
Okay. Before we go full politics on this, and I realise it's a political story because almost everything we talk about has a political aspect, I'd just love to get a little bit more of a flavour. You're younger than I am. You've been to youth clubs more recently. Yeah. What was it like, the one you went to? What was it for? How did it help people?
It was really, really good. They encouraged user participation. It was a Christian-run youth centre, but it wasn't. You didn't have to be a Christian to go there. You could listen to music. You could go on the internet if you didn't have internet access at home, or they had a tuck shop. You used to do arts and crafts, and it was fantastic. It was really, really good. And it was just a place that young people could go and hang out, really.
Why do young people need these facilities anywhere and at any time, Ben? Why do they matter?
Well, typically, they matter because they get young people off the streets and engaged in something positive. And that, when you, trying not to bring it back to politics, but when you knock on people's doorsteps, a lot of people say, young people, there's young people hanging on the street corners and things like that. But actually those youth centres actually get those young people off the street corners. I don't necessarily think all young people are causing mischief on the street corners, but that's how it's perceived. Mm-hmm. And so they actually create a positive place that young people can go, feel safe, and get support when they need to. I needed a lot of support when I was younger.
And who gave it? Who are the people in these facilities who are giving that support?
So the youth workers are giving that support. When I was in Medway Youth Council, which was Medway Youth Parliament back then, we had Jackie and Angela, who were fantastic at giving us support as the youth participation workers. In Gillingham Youth for Christ, we had a guy called Bill, who also ran another organisation, and he also did outreach on. I used to live down the Vineries in Gillingham, and he came down and did outreach work there, and they give a lot of support, especially when you're excluded from school, suffering from mental health issues and things like that. And
So would you argue, Ben, sorry to jump in, but would you argue that whilst these are universal services, that they do particularly good work among disadvantaged children struggling to stay in school, children struggling with mental health problems, children struggling at home?
Yes, absolutely. And they are vital for those young people. And that is it's just such a sad state to see any council get rid of youth services.
They're talking about their excitement about being a sort of a leader of the movement towards family hubs, which will provide some of these facilities. Will that work, a family hub, in the same way that these individual bespoke youth services have worked, do you think?
Well, some not necessarily, because a family hub would encourage families rather than the young person as an individual. Some young people have issues at home and they need independent kind of support away from home.
But supposing there's a family hub and it's just a room, isn't it, that's used in the evening for something else. So if teenagers are told this is the place you can go and you can do all the things you used to do, but you can do it in this room, in this building, on this evening, is that not good enough?
It depends on where they're located more than anything else. And it depends if they're young people friendly, because, a lot of youth services, specifically in Medway, for example, you've got Parkwood Youth Centre in Raynham, which has like a sound studio. You can't really do some of that stuff in a room. You can't be as creative, but you're taking that creativity away from them.
You're in Medway, and you're on Medway Youth Council, and you're a Lib Dem candidate in Medway at the recent local elections. Just bringing it back to, because obviously we've got a separate top tier authority that's responsible for these services in Medway, that's separate from Kent County Council.
Kent, yes.
My understanding, and my producers have been checking, there's nothing currently to suggest there's any similar consultation in Medway at the moment. I presume you haven't heard anything.
I would hope. No, I haven't heard anything, and I would hope not. But the issue is that Medway Council the new administration have inherited a significant financial debt, which does mean that kind of pretty much everything will be on the table to be looked at being cut, because services will need to be cut, but it's just where are they going to come from, if that makes sense.
Ben, what would you say to a family who use these facilities? There's a consultation, and I think people are fairly cynical about consultations. Right at the beginning of the proposed changes, I've got the document from Kent County Council in front of me. It says, as part of this consultation, we're proposing to stop funding the youth provision, which is run by non-KCC organisations. And they're very blunt. They say this is due to the financial pressures we are facing. And it says that means some activities and clubs would stop unless the organisations are able to find alternative funding. Would you bother engaging with that consultation?
Yes, I would engage with any consultation that you feel strongly about. Because consultations have to be listened to. And if so many people are saying that they don't want these these services cut, yes, difficult decisions have to be made, but you also have to weigh up the other issues that are going to come from closing those youth services, if that makes sense. And those consultations and those voices that could explain, if that makes sense, the issues that are going to come from that's going to be a very important voice. And young people also can fill out those consultations. And I would encourage young people who are looking at possibly losing their youth centres to also fill that out. I
would imagine, wouldn't you, that each of those facilities is probably providing that information about how to participate, because it's crucial to them as well. So perhaps if you go to a youth centre, your child does ask the next time they're in. I asked another guest who works in this area this question earlier on, Ben. From your experience of using a youth centre, and frankly of just caring about this issue, do you think that youth clubs and youth activities of these sorts, do they save lives?
I think they do, absolutely. They're a safe space that if a young person, for example, is going through sexual assault, suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies, that is where those youth workers are really, really good and can save lives. They do save lives. And I know for a fact they have saved lives. They have saved lives.
Thank you so much for talking to us today, Ben. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks.
Ben Rist, former member of the Medway Youth Council, and has stood as a Lib Dem in Medway elections, recent elections, which of course saw Labour return to power in Medway. This is